Hey folks, this is Mr. Walsh, your driver education instructor, and today we are doing lesson 15. You are just about at the very end of the course. And this lesson deals with planning, navigating, and breaking down and what to do in these circumstances. So without further ado, let's get started with the lesson for today. And we'll talk about the makeup lesson at the end of the class for those who need it. This one will be makeup lesson number 2. Makeup lesson number 1 we'll see later on, which will actually be planning a trip. So let's get started. For short trips, and this is very important, guys, we're going to start with trips first of all, and trip planning. We have to ask ourselves every time we get behind the wheel, is this trip necessary? What is the purpose of our trip? And we need to start thinking about the risk involved with that. And we need to start thinking about, do I have enough time? And how do I need to allow enough time for this trip? We especially need to listen to and focus on weather and traffic reports, especially weather. Okay. Choose the best travel time or best route to travel. And what is the most challenging traveling environment that you will face as you go from point A to point B? Will it be an urban area? Will it be a very congested on-ramp, off-ramp? One of the kind of spaghetti factories of on and off ramps when you're and some type of interchange. Is my vehicle prepared for a short or long trip? Right? Do I have all the necessary fluids? What about my tires? Right? Are my lights working properly? Is my registration up to date? Is my inspection up to date? Okay, these are all things that we need to think before we even go out on a short trip. This becomes vitally important, the weather especially, when we're talking about the winter time. Okay, and this might be a trip only that's 2 or 3 miles away. Okay. And then when planning an expanded trip, then we have all these other things to think about on top of that, like preparing the vehicle, right? So we need to have our tires, our brakes, our engine, everything needs to be working and in working order. We need to consider how we are going to load the vehicle, right? Quite often when we're driving long distance, we're going to pack our vehicle very, very, heavily, right? We're going to put a lot of stuff in it. I want you to take a look at my vehicle. This is what we affectionately call the schooner. It's the Honda Pilot from 2003 that I continue to tell you about. Quick little backstory with the Honda Pilot. So the Honda Pilot was actually my stepmother's. Okay, and I was my dad and my stepmother decided to move after my dad retired from Key West, Florida, to Italy. Right, they decided to first go to a place called Modena, and now they live near Siena in Italy. And I was working for Delta during the summer, and I asked them, what are you going to do with the Honda Pilot? And my dad didn't have a really good idea. He was just going to give it away to a friend, and they were literally leaving for Italy like 2 days later. Well, when I asked him this question, he's like, "Well, we really don't have a plan. Why, do you want it?" It's like, "Sure, I'll take it." All I had was the Mustang, and it was horrible to drive in the wintertime. So, flying and working for Delta, I could fly for free. And he told me, well, if you can get to JFK Airport, the next day, then the car's yours. And I think I would have paid to fly over there anyway, but of course I could just fly right over, and so I went over, picked it up, and helped them get through security and all that stuff and onto their plane, and then wound up driving the Honda back to my place in upstate New York. But since then, our schooner has really done a great job for us. You can see how well we packed it or put stuff on it. I don't think we packed it all that well, to be honest, but we put all the stuff on it and we drove it all the way across the country from New York State all the way to Oregon and Washington and back last summer. And we've also driven it down to Florida and back as well. So let's continue. We'll have a little more discussion about the schooner later on. So stuff we should pack. And I can tell you the colder the weather, the more important stuff is, okay? Basic and emergency equipment, maps, jack, flashlight. You need to know where your jack is for your car. You need to know where your spare tire is. You should have a first aid kit and know where it is. You should also have a flashlight just in case your batteries run out on your phone. Besides, you really want to have a flashlight that's stronger than your phone's light, okay? Personal preparation, right? So we need to determine the route. We need to get an idea about traffic, especially when we are traveling near or in or around large cities, especially during rush hour, something we want to avoid when we're making long distance, when we're taking a long distance trip. Hours of miles traveled each day, especially hours, guys. And extra keys. This is important. Extra keys for someone to hold on to. My wife has my extra set of keys for the schooner, and she puts them in her purse. And her purse pretty much usually goes with her wherever she goes. Bagged meals if you want to save money. We figured out a different way by using some of our camping gear to save money on meals. And medicines, yes. Personal preparing for a trip. So, like, the night before, getting enough sleep, uh, taking breaks during the trip, scheduling them almost. The way I schedule my trips is that when I get to the halfway mark for my and my gas tank, that's when I prepare to turn off and to get myself another cup of coffee, go to the bathroom, walk around, drive during waking hours. This is something that I almost always try to do because if you do drive through the night, it's almost like you need to use the next day to sleep it off. Okay. Plan on start times and end of the day of the drive, right? If you plan for it, you're going to get that much closer to staying in the waking hours. Okay, planning is key. So consider these things, okay? Do you have a GPS device or a map? Okay, of course, nowadays, I think exclusively GPS device. Will there be cell coverage where you're traveling through? This is hugely important. Guys, if you're traveling through the Adirondacks, for example, right up north of New York City, north of Albany, except for the Northway, Route 87, there is very, very, very little cell phone coverage. Okay, so you're going to be, to some degree, on your own. Okay, think about that, what that means. Okay, do you know the way? Have you been on that way before? Do you have a backup plan in case you get lost? Right? So if you don't have cell coverage, you got to have a cell phone who's going to be able to use GPS and keep you on track while cell coverage is lost. Have you considered the time and any hazards you might encounter, like road construction, or road conditions or congestion? Will there be people in the area to ask questions or ask for help if you get lost, right? So think in the Adirondacks, for example. And in the Adirondacks, yes, usually there will be other people so long as you're driving during the day. If you're driving at 3 a.m. in the morning, not so likely. I'm going to throw another factor in there. Let's say you're driving at 3 a.m. in the morning and your car just suddenly stops and it won't turn back on. and this is in January, okay, and you don't have, you didn't bother to prepare your car for being in the cold at, let's call it 10 degrees, which is very common in high elevation in New York State in January. What are you going to do? Okay. And you're miles from the nearest house. Okay. You can find this happening to you right in New York State, guys. Is my route safe? Can I call someone for help? How does my route go from safe to unsafe? Can I buy gas? Okay. This happened to us. And I explained a situation to you that happened to me and my brother. We were driving home. It was January. It was during Christmas break. And I think we had maybe gone skiing or something like that up north. I'm not exactly sure, but we found ourselves, and it wasn't that late. It was like 9 p.m. at night, and we were running really, really low on gas. And, in the Adirondacks, towns are sparsely populated, especially in the wintertime. Stuff that's usually open during the summer is closed. And that was our situation. We rolled into this town where we thought we'd be able to find gas, and the gas station was already closed at 9 p.m. We went to the one and only bar that was open in town and asked people, like, where can we get gas? And somebody told us, well, if you go down the road, there's this little gas station, and it's owned by a guy who lives there. You're gonna have to ring the doorbell or knock on the door, and he'll probably be home and serve you gas. And that's exactly what we had to. I mean, we limped the car there on fumes. There was nothing left, and we were going to be in a very bad situation if we couldn't get gas in our car. And that was two, teenagers. I think I was probably 19 and he was probably 17. Just not thinking things through. Okay. On a trip that we had done a zillion times, but never at 9 p.m. in the wintertime. Okay. Uh, when I got older, so things happen for, I think, especially for young men at around the age of 25. Usually they get married somewhere around that time. Usually they have children somewhere around that time. And all of a sudden this was the case for me anyway. All of a sudden I went from, totally, into risky, careless behavior to all of a sudden I got to take care of other people besides myself. And my son and I were doing a huge road trip through the American Southwest to see national parks, and we found ourselves. I mean, I planned this trip, so I knew where we were going. But the loneliest highway in America, which is Route 50 in Nevada. Okay, there's nothing for like around 100 and something miles. There's no gas stations there. Is absolutely nothing for like 150 miles, or I don't know, it could be 200 miles on this stretch of highway. And you can almost see as far as the eye can see, you can see the highway there. And there's not a lot of traffic on it. And there's no cell phone service here either. So if you break down, it's not a good place to be. So I wound up this is kind of where I learned to tell somebody about my trip before I go, or a segment of my trip before I go and do it. And so I recall telling my mother the night before what my plan was, and then calling her up at the last place where I had cell coverage to tell her this is what we're doing. We should be on the road for around 2 to 3 hours and to expect our phone call and do something if we don't call back, right? And she she was a little nervous, but said okay, and we filled up our car with gas. We got a bunch of water for our drive just in case something happened, and we set out and we did it. And the rental car that I used worked out fine, but be cognizant of where you're traveling. It can be a road that you've been doing forever. It can be an absolutely new place where you've never done before. Okay. Each case is going to bring like a new set of challenges. Okay, consider time of day, weather, and lighting. Be sure to consider the time of day that you'll be traveling. Traveling into or away from the sun or traveling at busy rush hour times may affect progress. For me, it usually works like this, guys. I am very good at avoiding rush hour, usually. Uh, and the second thing is, I almost always prefer to drive during daytime hours. I can be awake. It helps me stay awake. I'm great at driving in the early morning. Um, and for some reason, I usually find myself driving in the early morning when I'm heading west. So that works out pretty well for me too. Okay, GPS devices and phone apps. How much will it take to reach my destination? GPS devices are really good for telling you this information. You can find this information on Google Maps or MapQuest to mention only a few of these sites. Technology can also help reroute drivers for faster travel around congested areas. Inform regarding how much time can be saved by taking an alternate route can make decision making easier. Okay, so be sure to consider the time of day that you'll be traveling. New technology is constantly being developed to help with traffic alerts. And we know about the red line meaning heavy traffic and delays, and the green lines, which mean traffic is flowing smoothly. Okay, what do I like to use for long distance multi-day trips? Google My Maps, I think, is the best one out there. And they're not paying me to say this. I'm just saying this to you to help you along if you are planning a multi day route. Okay. This is one that I planned out not that long ago and took in April. Okay. Actually, I think right before our session opened. We drove all the way from New Hartford, New York, all the way down to Cape Coral and Sanibel Island in Florida, and then back. Okay. And uh, some things I considered while planning my route were weather, okay, traffic to some degree. Actually, I didn't really worry about the traffic. I was worried about the weather, um, and what to do at our destinations. To me, and hours of driving on the road. Okay, so weather, probably hours of driving on the road, weather, and what to do. Okay, because when I drive someplace like to Florida, I don't want to do it as fast as I can and just do as many hours as I possibly can, before I die, and then repeat the next day. If I wanted to do it like that, I would have stopped somewhere in North Carolina and then repeated the next day and got myself to Sanibel. But I'm 46 years of age. I've got money, and I want to enjoy my trip. So I planned to stop in Washington, D.C., to go bike riding during cherry blossom season, during Cherry Blossom Festival with my wife, to watch the cherry blossoms and take pictures and watch them blowing, the little blossoms blowing in the wind. It looks really pretty in Washington right around this time of year in April. And uh, honestly, I think Fredericksburg, because I'm quite interested in the Civil War, especially, and there's quite a bit of stuff to see right along Route I-95. So we found ourselves in Fredericksburg. Wasn't part of the plan, but we often take these side trips right off of I-95 or whatever route we're using if we see something that looks interesting. So I kind of budget that into my driving day. And I don't like to drive more than 5 hours a day. I'll only drive 5 hours a day or more than 5 hours a day if I really, really need to get from one place to another. Um, so we made that trip in Washington. It actually was really chilly that day, and the blossoms still hadn't really come out and turned pink. So we continued driving, and that's how we found ourselves in Fredericksburg for the evening. Beautiful place, by the way. We never knew anything about it, and we want to go back and see more of it. The next day, we drove all the way down to Savannah, and that was probably a good 5 or 6 hour drive. Wasn't that bad during day times. And Savannah, we decided, this is a place that we had visited before. We think it's the most beautiful city actually in North America. It's very, very, very picturesque. Totally recommend it. And the weather was very nice here, so we decided to spend 2 nights there and enjoy a day and night in Savannah. And then we drove down to Ocala, where my mother stays in the wintertime, visited with her, and then we drove to Sanibel and spent 3 nights in Sanibel, and then pretty much turned around and repeated the process going up with a stop in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. That was really the only difference on our trip. And we saw this, we stopped in Georgia. There was a plantation right off of I-95 that looked kind of interesting, so we stopped there as well. So this is how I do multi-day trips for us. And everyone's different. Some people, like my stepfather, just plan to get from point A to point B as fast as possible, with just a rest in between, and then repeat the next day. That's not my style. Okay, best app for shorter day trips and crosstown drives. So Waze is a great one. Okay, so why is Waze a good one? Well, okay, again, my opinion here. You can have a different app, or you might be using something, a GPS system in your car. Okay, for me, Waze is very accurate. Is very reliable about traffic flow. By the way, Waze works, in my opinion, extremely well in cities where there's a lot of users. Okay, but when you get to sparsely traveled places like the Adirondacks, it becomes less accurate. Okay. So, but in the highly populated places, it's very, very accurate. Where there's a lot of flow, I think it's very accurate. It is very reliable about traffic flow. It is pretty good about redirecting you away from traffic jams. Okay, we've had some issues where we found that if you disregard Waze and figure out a different way to go, we found this in Sanibel where there's large traffic jams. There were parts of Sanibel where you could go around the traffic, but Waze and Google Maps would not send you there. We just had to do it on our own, and we found it was a lot faster. You can add gas stations into the route. Its directions are rather good. It will beep at you if you are speeding. It cuts into telephone calls and podcasts and music to tell you directions. It will text or email a friend when you are running late. And this is really, really important. And this is probably the thing I like about it best. It accurately and reliably warns you against potential hazards on the route. So cars stopped along the way, stuff in the road, road construction, and often identifies speed traps and police activity. Okay. It warns about upcoming traffic jams. I think it even includes tolls in there too. So here we go.
I'm a millennial, so I have absolutely no sense of direction. I could probably figure out a paper map if it came to, but why bother when I've got digital navigation to help me around town? My favorite has long been Google Maps, but did you know that Waze is just as useful? It's actually got some features that Google Maps doesn't have, and you might even prefer the way it looks. So let's go. Here are some tips to get the absolute most from Waze. Google Assistant already sends you a departure reminder if you've got a calendar event with a location attached to it, but I often find that it's a little off in its estimations. Now, I use Waze for a reminder to leave the house. It's easy to set up, and I can even choose my departure based on the traffic flow. You can also select to have Waze integrated with your Facebook and Google calendars. Just flip a switch in the settings panel to set it up. It's especially helpful to have if you're always finding yourself rushing out the door to the next thing. Don't be rude. Use Waze to tell your friends you're running late before you get there. Tap on Send ETA from the direction screen, and you can send a quick email or text to let your pal know. So you're running late and you're low on gas? Okay, here's what you do. Set your destination and then tap on Add a Stop. From here, you can select to see a list of gas stations along the way, including the ones closest to your route. It'll also show you how much they're charging, and you can even customize which gas stations to show in the settings menu, as well as the type of gas you use in your car. If you're a speed demon, you need to slow down. But if you're having problems sort of reining it in, use Waze's speedometer feature. It will let you know what the speed limit is on your route and whether you're going over too much. You can also customize at which point Waze will yell at you. Note that this feature is only available in select areas. Good news! If you're using Android Auto in your car's built-in head unit, you can now choose Waze as your navigation hub. The app lets you do most of what you can already do on the regular Android app, like report traffic conditions or police presence. If you don't have Android Auto in your car, that's okay. Waze still does voice commands. You can enable them in the settings menu, though they work a bit differently than Google's voice commands. You can choose whether to three-finger tap on the screen or wave at the front-facing camera to turn the voice command on. For more tips on how to navigate life, be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube or visit us at pcworld.com.
All right. So quite a few nice little tips about Waze. And of course, you can go right to YouTube and find all types of other information about your favorite GPS device or app.
I'm a millennial.
Okay, before you go, and this is just as important, right? So even for short trips, we do want to check the weather, okay, especially in the wintertime. But also in the summer, we have thunderstorms and so on that can really affect our driving. Okay, so what do you like? I use the NOAA weather app. Okay, but you need to find a weather app that works best for you. What are you looking for with your weather map? I think you're looking for something that's going to give you the big picture. Okay, the big picture is good, and you can take the little picture, and you can really get an idea, and it should have increments or intervals of time, guys, so that you know when the weather is going to pass you or when it's going to arrive. All right, I believe that's very, very important. Um, Getting the big picture allows you to see what you're going to be driving yourself into, or how long this inclement weather is going to stick around you as you're moving from, I don't know, from north to south, for example, or vice versa, or east to west. Okay, you want one that's very accurate when it comes to location. It shows different layers of stuff, not just precipitation, but possible lightning, tornadoes, and again, forecasts and intervals, and shows the big picture. Okay, navigation tips. Notice how the streets are similar in this picture. Okay, this is actually a map from Cape Coral. Take a look at the red triangle. How would you describe its location to me? You'd probably say it's on the corner of, right, Southwest 21st Place in Southwest 2nd Street. Now take a look at the green circle. How would you describe this location to me? You'd probably say it's on the corner of Southwest 21st Ave and Southwest 2nd Terrace. Now, think about that. If you're plugging this into a GPS, the only difference here is the use of the word street or terrace, or the use of the word Ave or place, right? So depending on the city where you live, and Cape Coral is notorious for this, you have to be accurate with your input, with your GPS. And I'm telling you, if you put in Northwest or Northeast 21st Place, because there is one in Cape Coral, that has you in a totally different part of town. Okay, so you should be conscientious about putting in the correct address when you are putting it into your app. I just wanted to point that out to you. Okay. The Easy Pass and freeway toll interoperability. Okay, a beautiful thing, guys, is this is now obsolete in New York State. We no longer need to pay cash at places. And I just wanted to show you what it used to be like only a couple of years ago. It was overwhelming. And I think you can still find this, although I'm not sure, at airports. You can still find cash lanes, I think, even at JFK. Okay. However, you can also find easy pass lanes at all airports in New York State, and probably in most of the 17 different states that use Easy Pass. So, Easy Pass, as we are going to talk about, it really has a lot of advantages. It's kind of like, guys, we can't. It doesn't make sense not to get the Easy Pass anymore. Okay. So yeah, Easy Pass wants to move into all 50 states. You have to use the device in your car, and it will trigger the tolls. It is It covers all bridges and tunnel tolls, especially in New York City. Left lane express toll entry. This is absolutely true. And the HOV lanes, the express freeway toll lanes. For example, I needed to use them along Washington, D.C., right? To make my day go a lot faster. And they charge you a certain amount of money if you use them. Whew. Okay, right. And so they'll tell you what speed to continue going in. They won't even have these overhangs anymore. They'll just, except for, I believe, airports, but on highways and so on, it would look very different than this nowadays. Yep, and they use a camera system to detect, and take a picture of your Easy Pass or your license plate. Okay, let's take a look at this.
Well, a bit ahead of schedule, the State Thruway Authority is now saying all of the tolls will go cashless before the end of next month, with an exact date for the change coming this week. The Thruway has been urging motorists to get an Easy Pass before the switchover, and Two on Your Side's Dave McKinley explains why you may want to do that sooner rather than later.
Since it announced its plan to go to cashless tolling, the Thruway Authority has been urging motorists to get themselves one of these, an Easy Pass, and now there may be financial ramifications for those of you who don't. Once these cashless toll systems go online, if you don't have an Easy Pass, you'll be billed by mail. And besides the inconvenience of that, the Thruway Authority is proposing that not only will toll-by-mail customers pay 30% more than the rate for Easy Pass holders, but there will also be a $2 administrative surcharge per billing statement. On top of that, there has been the spotty record of motorists being billed properly by mail, with numerous complaints from folks about getting bills for hundreds or even thousands of dollars and not getting the bill in time to avoid incurring fines for non-payment. Those complaints prompted the state legislature to pass the so-called Toll Payer Protection Act. It would have given motorists up to a year to resolve discrepancies and would have prevented the state from suspending car registrations in the interim. But in both years, the bill was passed but vetoed by Governor Cuomo. Meanwhile, the Thruway Authority is holding 3 public hearings, all of them this week, on its proposed new rate structure. They are all virtual public hearings, though, so we do have information on how you can participate and where you can pick up an Easy Pass when you look for this story on WGRZ.com. Dave McKinley, Channel 2 News.
Okay, so definitely the $2 surcharge is in effect. And I don't know if there's a 30% increase anymore like there used to be, but definitely they will charge you a different amount of money depending on where you are registered to live. So, for example, on the Verrazano Bridge, I believe if you do live in Brooklyn or in Staten Island, there is quite a big discount compared to people who live somewhere else. Okay, what to do during a roadside breakdown? So, yeah, and here's the schooner. Pull over to a safe spot off the road if possible. Locate where you are. So you're going to need to be aware of what the cross streets are where you break down. And I'll tell you why that's important in just a minute. You really want to get the actual address. So you start looking around at buildings or houses to get the street number. Okay. Then call roadside assistance. They're going to ask you where you are, and you're going to need to use cross streets or an actual address to tell them. One good reason why you want to have your phone or your GPS working and don't you don't want to have any battery issues when this happens. Okay, stay in the car. Don't leave your car. That's always going to be my advice when you break down. Stay in your car. So long as you're off the road, you're safe. You're safer in the car than you are if you're outside of the car. Call for a ride home or to the service garage where this man is headed. Okay. With COVID, especially, you can't get a ride in the cab with the driver. Assess the weather conditions for what you need to stay warm or cool. Okay. Because you might be sitting there with your car off for quite a long time, and cars are not insulated very well. They're either going to get really hot or they're going to get really cold, depending on the weather conditions. If possible, clean out your vehicle of all the valuables you have in there. Okay, and check your car in at the service garage. So this happened to me just the other day. That's why I have a picture of it. And what can I say? My battery power was almost out on my phone. And I realized very quickly, without preparing very well, that I needed to get a ride. And I was quite far from where I wanted to be, or, where I considered civilization to be. So I quickly called my wife up. She had to leave work early and come pick me up along the side of the road. She actually got here before the service person did. I called AAA, and I didn't know where I was, but I could look at my GPS and look at the cross streets, and they wanted me to give them like a house number, right? And so I looked across the street and I could see a number for one of the houses there, and so I gave that to them as well. And my car was full of fly fishing gear. And fly fishing is not a cheap sport, especially the more you get into it. So I was sure to move all my fly fishing gear out of this vehicle, which is now in a parking lot at a service garage with the doors unlocked, no doubt. And I moved all my fly fishing gear out of my car and into my wife's car, so that, no one would be tempted to take it. Okay. And another thing was, it was hot this day. This guy was, sweating. It was in the 80s. There was no clouds. There was really no shade. And I knew that if I didn't call my wife, I'd probably be standing out here for probably 2.5 hours without even any water. So I called her so that I could keep myself from getting stranded. Okay. So this is very, very important. And this was more or less, this was not very far from my place at all. Okay. So, but the farther you get from your place, the more this is going to affect you. Typically, cars under warranty do not break down. The opposite is typically cars that no longer have a warranty often break down. Okay? The longer you drive them, the farther you go, the more likely they will break down. All right, so what does that mean for us? That means when we're taking a long distance road trip, we want to do it with a vehicle that is under warranty. Why? Just we're just playing this statistics game. It's less likely the car is going to break down. Okay. I have a feeling that we kind of pushed the schooner a little bit too far when we drove to Oregon. We came back. I know this I started feeling this in Oregon. I didn't know what it was at the time. It turned out to be a CV joint. And we drove it all the way back. And I did kind of limp it home the last, day or so, day and a half. And I brought it to my mechanic's attention about the CV joint. It really never was resolved. And we decided to take the schooner down to Florida just because we liked the bike rack on it. And when we were driving back up north, we wound up spending an extra day in Savannah because that's where I decided the schooner couldn't go any further without getting the CV joint fixed. So we did exactly that. And that was, these repairs start to get really expensive too, guys. Here we go. When you need to pull off the highway to check your car. This was on our way back from I think it was maybe on our way down when we were driving from Florida all the way down to when we were driving from New York all the way to Florida on I-95, and monitoring the vehicles behind me in the rear view mirror. I also would from time to time monitor my bicycles on the rack, make sure everything was okay. So I did notice that the rack had come undone, and my plan B was holding the bikes in place, which was a tire, or not a tire lock, a bike lock that kind of kept them both together. So I noticed that the outside bicycle had come off the rack from the top and was just hanging by the bicycle lock. So I had to do what you should do, and that's to pull off. So true or false, you should pull over on the shoulder of the highway, like I-95. How could I have made my vehicle and intentions more clear for other drivers? After checking the bikes, what else did I check? Let's see what we got for this.
Hi, this is Mr. Walsh, your driver education instructor, and a new tip for today. When you do need to pull over for whatever reason, and mine was because it appeared that the bikes on my rack were getting loose, you want to make sure that you get off the main highway. So we were on I-95, which is just over yonder, and pulled off onto this kind of country road here, and we didn't have to go too far until we found a pullout here, which is all gravel, and clearly a pullout for cars to do something like I'm doing just now, and be very far from the end of the road, which is the white line here. Okay, and after I fixed my bikes, I also did just a round the car inspection just to take a look at tires and so on. Maybe just take a sniff, see if the engine isn't doing something weird, and just did like a 360 around the car to take a look. Also to see if there's anything in this shoulder area here that would do something to the car. And there was nothing, but this is the type of thing that you want to do when you have to pull over. And it happens on a road trip. Okay, have a good one.
Okay, so true or false, you should pull over on the shoulder of a highway like I-95. That is false. If you can get, and this was to check on my car. So there should be no reason why I can't take an exit off of the highway and then find a place like I did on one of these service roads or country roads or whatever this happens to be. But it doesn't take too much to find some place where you can either safely pull off the road or to go to a parking lot. Okay, there definitely was no parking lot within a mile or two of this exit. And this looked pretty safe. As you can see, there was almost no traffic here. This is rather early in the morning. So I felt very safe here, and I made clear, even though there was, I always was very conscientious of oncoming traffic, and I just didn't want to get anywhere near the edge of the road too. How could I have made my vehicle and my intentions more clear for other drivers? If you said turn on your hazard lights, that would have been absolutely correct, and I did not turn them on here. I don't know if it's because I got lulled into that sense of security because there was so little traffic here, but I did not turn on my hazard lights, and I should have. And after checking the bikes, what else did I check? I checked out just the rest of the car just to get a quick overview. Looked at the tires. Looked, wanted to kind of use my sense of smell to see if there was anything like smoke or anything like that coming from the engine. And everything looked rather good, so we got back in the car and continued on.
Hi, this is Mr.
Other trip preparations. So you want to know how many hours you want to drive in a day. For me, it's if I'm going long distance, it's 5. That 5 is my number, and 5 allows me to conveniently add in side trips off of my main route. So if we see something, and we do this all the time, guys, and it makes the trip so much better, so much more enriching. When we see something interesting, we it's impulsive. We see it, we see a sign for it, and we just go, okay, let's go check this out, right? What's the worst that can happen? We lose an hour of our time to checking something out that we would probably never see again. Okay. Will there be convenience gas stations along the way? You have to know that, okay, on a long distance trip. And when we're driving on the eastern seaboard, right, on some place like I-95, there's going to be gas stations all over the place. But if we're driving out west, especially in desert environments, especially, we can go a long, long way before there's another gas station. And so I guess that's probably the reason why I get into the habit of filling it up at the halfway mark. And I'll give you just another example. Gas stations and driving in the Southwest. If you drive from Las Vegas to LA or vice versa, this is through the Mojave Desert. It's one of the hottest places in the United States. It's just incredibly hot during the summer, guys. And you don't want to get out of the car. It's like way over 100 degrees. Like we're talking like 120 degrees. And you just won't believe your weather app when it's telling you it's like 120 degrees outside. You get outside, and literally within a minute, you're baking. Okay, and it's dry heat, and you just feel your moisture leaving your body, and it leaves your body just from breathing it out. Okay. If you get, and there's, oh my goodness, you can go literally, I think at least an hour and a half of pure driving at 65 miles per hour before there's a gas station. And the gas stations are really expensive out in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And my son and I did this drive, and I super planned it. I planned it to do it early in the morning, like literally starting out before sunrise. I wanted to get out and start doing it and driving west at around 5 a.m. in the morning. Because I was concerned. It was so hot, it would actually melt the tires on our car. I was so worried. And let me tell you something. We were not alone with that plan. The highway was full of people, full of vehicles that had the same plan as we did, which was to make this drive, before the sun really gets going. So, with that in mind, right? And here's the thing: if we broke down, we were going to have to get someone to pull over and get us out of there, right? And leave the car behind and get it towed, because there was no cell phone service out there either. So we would have had to get in someone else's car, call AAA, and have the car picked up and taken to us, right? So it was just a very, very hot, inhospitable place to drive. Okay, so with that in mind, what kind of terrain or climate will you be driving through? Will it be desert? Will it be mountains? Will it be hot and tropical, urban, or very rural? All these climates and environments will play a role in how you prepare for your trip. And you should prepare for these, okay? You shouldn't be oblivious to this. Service your vehicle, okay? Before making extended trips, you should, at the very least, go to Jiffy Lube and get an oil change, and they will start to top off your fluids. That's the least you should do. You should go to your mechanic and have everything looked over. You should have your brake system looked over, your exhaust system, your steering system, your cooling and heating system, your engine system, your tires and your spare, and your windshield wiper fluid should be topped up too. Absolutely. Personal equipment to pack. So be sure to pack these personal items if trip planning in winter months. Okay, here we go. What do you need to bring in the car? What happens if you're in the Adirondacks in January and you did an awesome day of skiing at Gore Mountain or at, oh my goodness, at Whiteface, right? And you're on your way back. You skied there all day. You hung out. You had a meal after you skied. And now it's around 5 o'clock. It's dark. And there's not a heck of a lot of vehicles on the road. And now you need to, and there's no cell phone service as you drive through the Adirondacks. You need to really consider what happens if my car breaks down. Okay. What do I need to have? Hats, right? You should have a winter hat in your vehicle. It's the best thing to keep your head warm. If you can keep your head warm, you can usually keep the rest of you relatively warm. Extra socks, gloves, right? Boots to be, if you have to, out in the snow. Okay. If you're just walking around in sneakers, especially like jogging sneakers, if you have to actually get out of your car and walk to some place with half a foot of snow, your feet are going to be freezing cold. Okay, blankets. You should definitely have a jacket packed, right? You'll have that if you went skiing for the day. Rain gear, okay, an umbrella, flashlight, something to eat, some type of snack that you can just leave in your car forever. You should have some type, water bottles, something to drink. You should definitely have your phone charger and an external battery to charge up your phone. Okay, that means have your cable, your lightning cable, whatever you call those things. Sorry, 46. You should also have in your car at all times a window scraper, right? Something to push the snow off your car and something to scrape the ice off the windows of your car. You should have something like a shovel. You would preferably have a shovel. I don't know. I don't carry a shovel in my car. I think it looks kind of silly. Unless you have like one of those really cool looking avalanche shovels that are really small. And you should carry along with you either sand or salt, something to help you get unstuck if you get stuck in deep snow. Okay, this is probably going to be our makeup session number 1 is going to be planning a road trip. Okay, passing and being passed by recreational vehicles or large vehicles in general. Okay, other drivers will probably pass you if you drive slower than they do. Okay, we know what's going to happen. Okay, when a larger vehicle overtakes you, the air it displaces tends to push you to the side or kind of suck you in. It pushes you to the side and then it sucks you in as they pass you. Okay, as a large vehicle passes, the pressure of displaced air will be rapidly reduced, causing your vehicle to move abruptly toward the passing vehicle. Okay, not only that, but in the wintertime, we need to be aware of this too. The larger the vehicle, the more stuff from the road is going to spray up onto your car and onto the windshield of your car, right? So, the grit from the road, If it's raining, it could be grit from the road. If it's wintertime, it's definitely going to be grit from the road, and it's also going to be like slush and stuff. So you're going to constantly be using your windshield wipers in both cases, really. But in the case of the wintertime, you will find your car gets covered in grit, and you'll be using your windshield washer fluid a lot in the wintertime. Okay. Be prepared to countersteer against the push when they're passing you, and the pull when they get past you. Okay. Remember that these larger vehicles, if you're only on a two-way road, okay, country road, for example, they're going to need a lot of time to accelerate and get ahead of you. And because everyone knows this, they're going to try to build up steam before they ever come anywhere near you. And if they already have a full head of steam, the last thing they really want to do is slow down quite a lot because you're driving, slowly, or maybe you're even driving the speed limit. So expect them to continue with their full head of steam because you've been monitoring them in your rearview mirror, and expect them to come out and try to overtake you without losing any of that inertia. Okay. So with that in mind too, be considerate of other vehicles. If you notice a lot of vehicles behind you, it is courteous and considerate to stay in the right lane or pull off the road and stop so others may pass. And only do this, of course, if there is a safe place to do it. Have I done this? Absolutely, I've done this, right? So, think about driving through the Adirondacks. There are times when I drive through the Adirondacks and I have absolutely no interest in driving more than 55 miles per hour. There are times when I drive anywhere and I don't want to even go the speed limit because of the traffic conditions. Okay. Not because of the road conditions, because of the surface conditions. And I'll pull off onto a smaller side street, with ample time to show everyone my intentions and or into a parking lot and let them pass me, because I don't need to have 8 vehicles behind me pressing me to move, 10 or 15 miles per hour faster. Okay, use the stop as an opportunity to recheck wiring connections and the hitch. All right, we're not pulling a trailer. Okay, trip planning and exit quiz. So when towing a vehicle, allow twice as much distance to pass. We're not going to be towing a vehicle, but definitely want to at least allow yourself twice as much distance. And we can expect that for a vehicle that is towing something. Okay. Always carry a spare can of fuel when traveling on a long distance trip. I do not recommend this, guys. Don't do it. Plan ahead for where the gas stations are. I don't want you to take gasoline into your vehicle. That's foolish. Recreational vehicles hold the roadway better in windy conditions because of their size and weight. That is false. And we should be aware of this, guys. The larger the vehicle, the more it's going to be affected by windy conditions. In order to stay, so I'm just going to do these ones real quick. It's going to take twice as much. Do not take gas in your vehicle with you. And no, the worse they will fare in windy conditions. In order to stay alert while driving on a long distance trip, take a break every 4 hours. Oh, I'd say take a break every 2 hours. Drivers often fail to observe height and weight signs when driving large RVs of vehicles. This is true. Okay, so a lot of times, guys, when people are driving RVs, a lot of them are rentals, and they aren't even aware of the height and weight of their RV. So, and you can kind of identify the rentals, and you can also identify like U-Hauls, for example. So be very conscientious about U-Hauls and so on when it comes to overpasses and so on. That's a potential hazard. Okay. Have you ever noticed I don't know if you've ever driven on some of the parkways that go into Westchester County, like the Hutchison, I think it's called the Sarah Hutchison River Parkway, which I use quite often. Big RV type large trucks are not allowed onto it because the overpasses are, for one reason, are very small. Another one is there's usually no shoulder on a lot of the parkway. So if a car is disabled, it causes problems. And the larger the vehicle, I think the larger the problem it causes. Okay, when typing the coordinates into your GPS for short trip travel, make sure to type the correct address. Absolutely. Using the correct name of the street, right? Road or avenue. So as to not be rerouted to the wrong area. That is absolutely 100% true. And it's happened to me. Make sure that you have checked windshield wiper fluid before heading out on a long distance trip. That is true. Make sure all these fluids have been checked. The odometer can help you determine how many miles per gallon you are getting on a given trip. That is true. Map legends can help identify the type of road that your route will follow, as well as exit numbers. This is true as well. Okay, we don't use maps too much anymore, but we do need to be aware of the type of road. Okay, and that's kind of hard to do using a regular GPS. And I don't have a very good way of addressing that, especially if you don't have an SUV or a truck. An SUV or a truck, you're just not going to have that issue. I'll give you an example real quick. So here we were in the schooner, right? The 2003 Honda Pilot that you saw in the pictures. And we wanted to camp in this place it's called Gross Ventre. And it's actually really worth showing. So let me go to it. It's called Gross Ventre Campground. I think. Let me just see. Let me just see if I can just write the road. Okay, so yeah, here it is. So it's just outside of Grand Teton, like Jackson Hole, and you can go this way or you can go this way off of Route 191, right? I think that's probably what it is there. And let's see what it looks like. Okay, that looks pretty nice. But if you go into, this is where we were, guys. So it looks beautiful, right? Doesn't it? And we wanted to camp out on the other side of the valley from the Grand Teton Mountains. It was gorgeous. One of the best places we ever camped. But the road turns into a dirt road. It gets a lot worse than this, by the way. This is nice and, nice grade, I think it's called. Imagine massive potholes and rather narrow around pretty steep places. That was how the road turned out to be. And it looked like this from where we were camping. It looked kind of like that. It was really beautiful. It kind of gets, it kind of gets like this, right? So you have these, and it gets even worse than that, to the point where even we decided we weren't going to go any further with our vehicle. And we had an SUV, but I can't imagine doing the drive. Let me see if I can do campground. And there was one campground in there. The rest of it was kind of wide open. I wish I could find it. Well, not the other word. Let me see if I can just do National Forest. It doesn't look like it, guys. Anyway, take a look at this road. Probably something you can't do in a regular car. You're going to need to have some type of vehicle like an SUV or a truck to do it. And sometimes, our GPS, and here's the Grand Teton here. Our GPS told us this was a road. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. Last question. Load the heaviest items on the bottom forward toward the trunk. Forward. Well, if you want to say forward, on the forward part of the trunk, then that's absolutely true. Yep. Okay. That also is with U-Hauls and so on too. Heavy is forward and at the bottom. And that is it for today's lesson. I hope that you now are you are ready to do your short and long trips. Okay. Remember what we talked about, using our GPS, using Waze, for example, as a way to monitor what's going on as we drive. We want to be conscientious of our weather forecast before we even get in the car to make a decision whether it's worth driving there or not. Okay. Long distance trips, we're actually going to plan out multi days, and we're going to share that information with loved ones, with our parents, for example. And that is, and if we do have a breakdown, we need to be prepared for it too. So, the stuff we pack in the car, and how we're going to communicate with the roadside assistance is very, very important. Okay, so trying to avoid those breakdowns in the first place and what to do if we do have a breakdown. That's it. That was lesson 15, guys. This is it. So, next lesson is going to be our final exam. We'll review the exam before we take it. Then you'll be taking the final exam, and that will be the end of class for us. So, have a great day, and we will see you next class.